The message wasn't meant for me. Popped up on her iPad while she was in the shower. Just one line. I can't wait until he finally finds out. No name. No emoji. Just that. And after 34 years of marriage, I realized something terrifying. There are sentences you can't unread. I wasn't snooping. The iPad was on the kitchen counter. Screen lit up. Curiosity isn't betrayal. But what I saw next felt like I had stepped off a cliff. I opened the thread. Months of messages. Late at night. While I was asleep next to her. Photos. Not explicit. But intimate. Private. Personal. The kind of tone you don't mistake. I didn't recognize the number. But then I saw his name. And my entire body went cold. It was my best friend. Daniel. 40 years of friendship. We met in high school. He stood next to me at my wedding. He held my son when he was born. And for the last 8 months, he had been texting my wife. I miss you. I didn't scream. I didn't confront her immediately. I sat down. Because when betrayal hits that close, your body shuts down before your brain can react. I scrolled back. The messages went back 8 months. But the tone suggested it had started earlier. There were jokes only two people share when they've crossed a line. Inside language. Shared nostalgia. Then I found the photo. Not of them together. Of the lake house. My lake house. The one we go to every summer. Sent by her. Caption. Soon. That word again. Soon. When she came downstairs, her hair was still wet. She smiled at me. And for the first time in my life, I saw a stranger wearing my wife's face. How was your shower? I asked. She hesitated. Fine. I slid the iPad across the counter. She didn't touch it. Didn't deny it. Didn't cry. She just sat down slowly. How long? I asked. She didn't answer. That silence told me everything. Since last fall, she said finally. 8 months. 8 months of dinners with both of them. 8 months of shared jokes. 8 months of him sitting at my table. I felt something unexpected. Not rage. Humiliation. Because betrayal by a stranger is one thing. Betrayal by your best friend? That's a fracture in identity. Did you sleep with him? I asked. She looked at me and said the worst possible answer. Yes. The air in the kitchen felt thin, like oxygen had been reduced. I nodded slowly, because sometimes your body moves before your emotions catch up. Why him? I asked. That question wasn't about sex. It was about loyalty, about history, about 34 years of shared life. She swallowed. Because he sees me. That sentence hit harder than the confession. And then she said something that made everything worse. It wasn't supposed to go this far. That's what people say when it already has. But what I didn't know yet, what I couldn't have imagined, was that this wasn't just about cheating. It was about something they had been planning. Something that involved my house, my savings, and a decision they thought I would never have the courage to make. And when I confronted Daniel the next day, he didn't deny it. He told me something that changed everything. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry, because I was calculating. There's something colder than rage, clarity. And clarity is dangerous. The next morning, I drove to Daniel's house. We've known each other since we were 17. Same football team. Same first beer. He stood next to me at my wedding. I was godfather to his daughter. There are friendships that feel like blood. And then there are friendships that quietly rot. He opened the door like it was any other morning. Smiled. Hey man. I didn't say hello. I just looked at him. And he knew. His smile disappeared before I even spoke. How long? I asked. He didn't pretend. Since last fall. Same answer she gave. That hurt in a strange way. At least their lies were consistent. Why? I asked. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just direct. He exhaled slowly. You were never really there anymore. That sentence hit like a slap. Because it wasn't entirely false. But it wasn't entirely true either. Being busy isn't permission, I said quietly. He nodded. I know. Then he said something that shifted everything. We didn't mean to hurt you. That word, we. Not she. Not I. We. Like they were a team, and I was outside of it. Are you in love with her? I asked. He hesitated, then said, yes. Not shamefully, not proudly, just honestly. For a second I imagined hitting him. But violence doesn't repair dignity. It just spreads damage. Instead, I asked the question that mattered. What's the plan? He went quiet, too quiet, and that's when I understood. There was one. He looked at the ground. We were going to tell you. When? Soon. There it was again. Soon. The word people use when they're building something behind your back. What were you planning? I pressed. He hesitated, then said something that made my stomach drop. She was going to ask for the house. I stared at him. The house. He nodded. She said if you sold it, you'd split everything evenly. Everything evenly. 34 years of work. Retirement savings. Investments. And he would step into a ready-made life. It wasn't just betrayal. It was transition. They weren't sneaking around for excitement. They were preparing for replacement. Were you going to move into my house? I asked quietly. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. I drove home in silence. But something inside me had shifted. Because this wasn't just emotional infidelity. It was structural, financial, strategic. When I walked into the house, she was sitting at the table, waiting. Did you talk to him? She asked. Yes. Silence filled the room. Were you going to leave? I asked. She didn't answer immediately. Then she said, I thought about it. Thought about it, I repeated. That's not the same as planning. Her eyes flickered, and that told me everything. You were going to ask for the house, I said. She froze. That tiny physical reaction. Guilt doesn't lie. It's not like that, she said quickly. How is it? She struggled to answer. Because when motives are exposed, they sound ugly. I felt like I deserved something, she said finally. Deserved. After 34 years. After shared struggles. After sacrifices. Deserved. For what? I asked. For not feeling chosen for a long time. That sentence hung in the air. Because this wasn't just lust. It was resentment. Slow-building resentment. I wasn't going to leave you with nothing, she added. That almost made me laugh. Like she was negotiating a business exit. Not dissolving a life. That night, I did something I had never done before. I called a lawyer. Not in anger. In clarity. I needed to know my position. My rights. My exposure. The lawyer was calm. Measured. You need to protect your assets immediately, he said. Change passwords. Freeze joint credit increases. Document everything. It felt clinical. Like preparing for war. I didn't tell her I called. Not yet. Because suddenly I wasn't just a husband. I was a man protecting his future. The next week felt unreal. Daniel stopped coming by. Our shared friends sensed tension. But no one knew the truth. Not yet. Then something unexpected happened. My daughter called. Mom seems different, she said carefully. My heart tightened. Because this wasn't just about me. It was about the ripple effect. Family fractures don't stay contained. I confronted my wife again. Do you love him? I asked. Yes, she said. No hesitation. Honesty again. That almost hurt more than deception. Do you love me? She hesitated. And that pause told me more than any answer. That night, I slept in the guest room. For the first time in 34 years. Not out of anger. Out of separation. But what I didn't realize yet was that Daniel wasn't the only person who would be affected by this. Because a week later, he showed up at my door, panicked, and told me something I never expected. Something that turned this from betrayal into crisis. Daniel didn't knock like a confident man. He knocked like someone who had run out of options. Hard, uneven, desperate. I opened the door, and for the first time in 40 years, he didn't look like my equal. He looked afraid. We need to talk, he said. I almost laughed. Now you want to talk? This isn't about that, he said quickly. It's about money. Of course it was. I let him in. Not because I trusted him. because I wanted to see how deep this went. He sat down at the same kitchen table where we had watched football games together for decades. The irony wasn't lost on me. I invested in something last year, he said. I stayed silent. Real estate development. It went bad. How bad? I asked. He swallowed. I'm upside down about 300,000. The number hung in the air. 300,000. And suddenly I understood something. You were planning to leave your debt behind, I said slowly. His silence confirmed it. He hadn't just fallen in love with my wife. He had fallen into financial collapse. And she was his exit strategy. Did she know? I asked. He hesitated. She knew I was struggling. Not the same as she knew everything. But not innocent either. So the plan was simple, I continued. She leaves. You move in. The house sells. She gets half. Your debt disappears. He didn't argue, because there was no argument to make. It was ugly, transactional, strategic, and I had been the silent funding source of their future. For the first time since discovering the affair, I felt something new. Not humiliation, control, because desperation shifts power. And Daniel was desperate. Are you threatening me? He asked quietly. I leaned back. No. Pause. I'm evaluating you. You think she'll stay if you destroy me? He asked. That sentence hit differently, because it exposed something fragile. He wasn't confident she would choose him. He needed stability. He needed an outcome. He needed her to commit. And that was when it became clear. This wasn't a grand love story. It was two people escaping discomfort in different ways. She was escaping invisibility. He was escaping debt. And I was the bridge. What happens if I tell her everything? I asked calmly. His jaw tightened. You wouldn't. Why? Because it'll blow up your family. That was his leverage. My love for stability. But here's what he didn't understand. The family was already fractured. The illusion was already gone. I want one thing, I said. What? You walk away. He stared at me. And if I don't? I held his gaze. Then I make sure every mutual friend knows exactly what happened. He went pale. Not because of shame. Because of reputation. Men our age don't fear fistfights. They fear exposure. He stood up slowly. You're not the only one who can lose something, he said. And then he left. That night I told my wife about the debt. About the investment. About the house plan. She looked genuinely shaken. You're lying, she said at first. I'm not. I watched her process it. Her eyes shifted from anger to doubt. Because deep down, she knew he hadn't been entirely transparent. Did you know he was in that much trouble? I asked. No, she whispered. And for the first time since this started, I believed her. What were you going to do if the house sold? I pressed. She didn't answer, because maybe she hadn't thought that far. Fantasy doesn't include spreadsheets. That night, something cracked inside her. Not defensiveness. Trust in him. Because love can survive guilt. But it struggles to survive manipulation. 2 days later, she asked to meet Daniel alone. I didn't stop her. Because at this point, control wasn't about preventing. It was about allowing truth to surface. She came home 3 hours later. Eyes red. Voice quiet. He didn't tell me everything, she said. No, I replied. He didn't. She sat down, silent for a long time. I feel stupid, she whispered. Not romantic, not tragic, just human. Here's the thing about betrayal. It rarely happens in isolation. It's usually layered with unmet needs, bad timing, ego, fear, and sometimes financial collapse. A week later, Daniel called again, not to threaten, to ask for help. I didn't answer, because the dynamic had shifted. He no longer held power. He was exposed. And for the first time since the iPad lit up on the counter, I felt steady, not because I had one, but because I was no longer confused. But stability doesn't equal resolution, because the real question remained. Now that she saw him clearly, would she still choose him? Or would she choose the life we built? And when she finally gave me her answer, it wasn't what I expected. She didn't speak the night she met him. Not immediately. She moved through the house slowly, like someone carrying something fragile inside her. I didn't push, because sometimes silence reveals more than interrogation. We sat in the living room. The television was off. No background noise. Just us. 34 years of shared history sitting between us like a third person. What did he say? I asked quietly. She stared at her hands. He didn't deny it. Of course he didn't. Did you know about the debt? I asked again. She shook her head slowly. He told me he was struggling, she said. But he never gave me numbers. That detail mattered. Because struggle sounds romantic. Numbers sound dangerous. Did you love him? I asked again. Or did you love who you were with him? She looked up. That question landed. I loved how I felt, she admitted. There it was. Not him. Not necessarily. The feeling. When did you stop feeling that with me? I asked. She didn't hesitate this time. When we stopped talking about anything that wasn't logistics. That hurt. Because it was true. We had become efficient, cooperative, functional, but not curious. Were you going to leave? I asked one last time. She closed her eyes. I thought I would. Past tense. That was new. What changed? She exhaled slowly. The meeting today. I waited. He asked me how fast the house could sell. That sentence shifted everything. Because love doesn't start with real estate timelines. He said we could rebuild somewhere else, she continued. But he didn't ask if I was ready to lose everything. Her voice cracked. And suddenly I realized he wasn't risking what I was. That was the fracture. He had less to lose. She had a life, children, shared history, roots. I don't want to start over from ashes, she whispered. I don't want to be 60 and scrambling. For the first time, I didn't see a woman choosing between two men. I saw someone terrified of instability. And what do you want? She asked me quietly. That question landed differently now. Because for weeks I had been reacting. Now I had to decide. I walked into the kitchen, stared at the walls, the table, the pictures of our kids growing up. I thought about pride, about dignity, about revenge, about staying, about leaving. Leaving would be clean, clear, understandable. People would say I did the strong thing. Staying would be complicated, messy, suspicious. People would question it. I came back into the living room. I don't want to be chosen because he collapsed, I said. She nodded. That's fair. I want to be chosen because you're done running. Silence. Then she said something I didn't expect. I am. You're sure? I asked. She nodded slowly. I confused attention with love, and excitement with safety. She paused. And I almost confused escape with freedom. That sentence felt honest. Painfully honest. What about him? I asked. She picked up her phone. Without drama, without tears, and blocked his number. Right in front of me. It wasn't cinematic. It wasn't emotional. It was deliberate. And somehow that mattered more. But trust doesn't return because someone presses a button. It returns slowly, or not at all. The next few months weren't romantic. They were uncomfortable. Therapy sessions, hard conversations, long walks, moments where resentment surfaced unexpectedly, moments where I questioned whether staying made me weak. One night, I admitted something I hadn't told anyone. I stopped trying, I said. She looked at me carefully. When life became about maintaining, not living, we both had drifted. She drifted toward attention. I drifted toward routine. Neither of us noticed how far apart we had become. Daniel tried calling once more. From another number. I answered. Is she with you? He asked. No. Is she staying? Yes. Long silence. Then he said something that surprised me. I didn't think you'd fight. I almost laughed. I didn't know I needed to. And that was the truth. You don't fight for what you assume is permanent. Weeks turned into months. The house felt different. Not healed, but real. Less polite. more honest. We talked about aging, about fear, about feeling invisible, about pride, about regret, things we hadn't said in years. One evening, my daughter asked quietly, "Are you two okay?" I looked at my wife. She looked at me, and I realized something. We weren't okay. We were rebuilding, and rebuilding is louder than pretending. A year later, Daniel sold his house, moved away. We heard it through mutual friends. No dramatic ending, no final confrontation, just distance. And here's the truth no one wants to hear. Affairs don't always destroy marriages. Neglect does. Silence does. Assumption does. The affair was a symptom, not the root. Do I trust her fully? No. Trust after betrayal isn't blind. It's conscious. You choose it, daily. But here's what changed me most. When I found that message on the iPad, I felt small, replaceable, like a man who had been quietly edged out. But now, I know something different. I wasn't replaced. I was taken for granted. And those are not the same thing. I didn't lose my wife to another man. I almost lost her to distance. And the only reason we survived is because we finally stopped pretending we were fine.